Welcome back. Patrick Malayter says term limits and spending reform are by far the biggest reasons he's running for Congress. He's a retired CPA and one of nearly a dozen people running to succeed Congresswoman Victoria Spartz. He talked to our Phil Sanchez.
I have very little confidence that the existing members of Congress can make a difference in terms of actually working together to resolve a problem. I am much more willing to take a chance on younger minds, different minds that might have a interest in solving problems for the country, having different ideas, different voices enter into this, as opposed to the tribes we have here now in Washington, D.C.
Right.
So that's one. I think there's a few things that we can do to start to reduce the deficit. So, for example, I was a national director of a large CPA firm's tax practice. You know, one of the things that you notice in that particular role is that there are just a lot of really greasy loopholes in there that largely benefit the top half of the top 1%
Sure.
of people in the country. And there are hundreds of billions of dollars of those items in the budget. Well, that's one area we can start to raise revenue without necessarily changing any of the tax rates for people or deductions for regular people.
Closing those loopholes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Massive loopholes with literally hundreds of billions of dollars at stake. So that's one. Also, during the Clinton administration, they had pay-as-you-go type policies where, again, if you wanted to spend additional revenue, you had to find some offset so that you weren't increasing spending. So that's another simple step that we can take.
Okay.
You know, there's also just a number of areas where we do spend money right now that could be reevaluated.
Yeah, you also, prior to coming on and us having just a conversation briefly
Sure.
off camera, you mentioned that you have some other ideas that are a little bit different, that are not in line with the GOP, the traditional GOP. What are those?
Well, I probably have a much different viewpoint with respect to women's reproductive rights than any of the candidates in the race. So,
How so?
As you know, Indiana enacted a pretty much near total abortion ban in the state, and for all intents and purposes put Planned Parenthood out of existence. So, you know, certainly my wife and I, as you mentioned, have 5 children. I certainly embrace the sanctity of life, and I'm not pro-abortion. However, I am pro-choice. So what I mean by that is I think women need to have reproductive rights in a manner that are safe, legal up to a point, and rare. So what do I mean by safe? Well, that means that you should be able to go to a medical facility, including a Planned Parenthood, to have those types of services provided. From the standpoint of timing, you know, I generally lean with a 12 to 14 week time frame to receive that type of care, irrespective of what the circumstances are, with additional time based on the viability of the child and the mother's health.
Right.
So, but if you think about the termination of Planned Parenthood here in Indiana, what a sexist thing to have done. You know, Planned Parenthood just did not do abortions. They provided a whole series of other health care for women. So, for example, prenatal and postnatal care, contraceptive advice, cancer screening. So all of those types of services that were available to women went away through the process. And again, I think it was sexist to have done that.
Yeah. When you have these conversations on the campaign trail or with other fellow GOP members, what do they say? Do they give you any pushback when you bring these topics?
Well, I can't say that I've discussed these issues with many of the other candidates in the race, simply because I know that they are diametrically opposed from my viewpoints in the area. And look, I realize everyone in this race is entitled to their own beliefs. But to expect that any one candidate must agree with A, B, C, D, and E to be an authentic Republican or an authentic Democrat is, you know, just not sensible.
Yeah.
You know, that means you're a robot, not someone that thinks for themselves. And again, I respect anyone's opinion in this particular area because it's very personal. Nevertheless, to completely lock women out of having a choice, I just disagree with.
Yeah. I'm almost out of time, so just quickly, what do you want folks to know about you, and also just give us an idea of how things are going on the campaign trail?
Sure. So again, my key issues are term limits. Secondly, I've got some public safety issues that are of significance to essentially hold prosecutors financially liable for these criminals that are going through the system on a revolving door basis, so that there are financial penalties that a citizen can recover from these prosecutors. I also have things related to education reform and tax reform, as we've talked about here. As far as how things are going on the campaign trail, I have a very grassroots campaign. I talk to a lot of individuals throughout the district, and I will tell you, it cleanses your soul, because you hear a lot of different issues from the standpoint of, you know, how people are dealing with inflation, concerns about how they're going to send their kids to college, concerns about the border. So there are a number of issues that, I guess there's a number of themes that you hear. But the economy probably is number one, and then probably the border being number two.
Yeah. Well, Patrick, good to see you. Thank you so much for coming in.
Be well.
Raskin will be permitted to participate in today's hearing for the purposes of making opening statements and asking questions of the witness. They each will receive 3 minutes for an opening statement and 5 minutes to question the witness. The chair now recognizes himself for an opening statement. Robert Hur was appointed special counsel on January 12th,